If you are looking for safety in your pitchers for MLB DFS, you have come to the wrong slate because tonight's slate for MLB DFS is lacking in that department by a pretty wide margin. There's maybe one pitcher I would justify or classify as being quote unquote safe for tonight, and that guy isn't even that safe because the sample on him being quality is a little bit lower. So if you're looking for a quality safe pitcher for today, I got bad news for you. We're going to break things down, though, run through which pitchers we can justify despite the red flags, and get you set for Friday night slate of MLB DFS. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down today's 14-game main slate with lock set for 7:05 for tonight. And unfortunately, there is more rain in the forecast where today we could not get the Toronto Blue Jays in their great matchup last night. Today, more rain for the Mets and the Pirates up in New York. It's possible. I would check back on that one later on. It looks better today than it did yesterday. So we'll see if they're able to get that game in. But it does look better today than it was yesterday, at least. Rain is in Boston for the Red Sox and Phillies, but it should be rolling out before first pitch. So looks like they'll be good to go there. I check back on that one later on to see what the timeline of that rain is. But as of right now, I would expect that game to be good to go. So the two main rain spots for tonight are in New York and Boston. Check back on those later to see if we are able to utilize players in those games. Of course, yesterday we did talk a lot about rain in the 4 p.m. show. Should be a topic once again for today. That is 4 p.m. on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages. You can ask any question you've got there each day on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages to get set for MLB DFS. Back on once again today at 4 p.m. to get you set for tonight's slate and take your questions live on air. Make sure you subscribe there, but also check out the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. We've got, of course, this podcast, but also we have a UFC 264 preview via Austin Swain that is posted right now, getting you set for the McGregor versus Dustin Poirier matchup once again, matchup number 3 between those guys. He gave his thoughts on that matchup and the entire card that is already posted. NASCAR podcast coming up later on today. That's on the FanDuel YouTube page at 10:30 a.m. and then on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. After that, make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. Hey, soccer fans, this season, FanDuel and Captain Morgan are teaming up to give you a one-of-a-kind soccer contest. Introducing Captain Morgan Soccer Pick'em, a weekly fantasy contest that is entirely free to play. The contest is simple. All you have to do is make quick predictions for Saturday games of soccer season. You'll earn points for each correct pick and compete for a chance to win up to $3,000 in prizes every single week. Head over to FanDuel and enter the Captain Morgan Soccer Pick'em today. Must be 21 plus to participate. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel Fantasy app. Eligibility restrictions apply. And don't forget to make your game day more enjoyable and delicious and sub in the captain. Let's go through our pitching preview for today here in MLB DFS. Alek Manoah is the highest salary pitcher on FanDuel for today. Of course, he was scheduled to pitch yesterday, got pushed back to today. Now facing the Rays, he is $10,300. Charlie Morton is facing the Marlins. He checks in at $10,000 on FanDuel. Zach Thompson in that exact same game is $9,600. Taijuan Walker is $95. Wade Miley is $92. And then Alex Cobb, Logan Webb, and Cole Irvin are the others at $8,000 or higher. And as you can tell there's no, I guess after last night, should we classify Darvish and Scherzer as being like safe? Probably not. But there's no name aces on tonight's slate. The closest guy to that, in my eyes, is Charlie Morton. And he's facing the Marlins for a second consecutive start. And it's his third time seeing them since June 11th. To me, that's hyper annoying. Those are big negatives, big red flags. And it means that that's why Morton does not belong in the safe bucket we were talking about before. I do still think that Morton should be high on our list for tonight. Everything else lines up really well for Morton here. He hasn't had a ton of change in his movement numbers since the sticky stuff discussion began, which means we can expand the sample here. Go back to his past 10 starts. In that time, Morton has a 3.47 skill interactive ERA with a 28% strikeout rate. His batted ball data has always been tremendous, and it's been very good in this sample as well. It's also a good matchup for a righty. The Marlins have a 90 WRC plus versus righties with a 139 ISO. They are willing to strike out with a 25% strikeout rate versus righties, and that's a good thing. Now, it's worth noting they've done well versus Morton. They've scored 4 runs against him in both those recent starts, one again June 11th and one last week. So that's really enticing from their perspective. No other team, though, in this time has scored more than 3 runs across the past 10 starts against Morton. And there have been some whiffs against Morton with the Marlins. He has a 16.7% swinging strike rate his last time out. So I wish this weren't a repeat matchup. I'd feel very confident with Charlie Morton. If it were not, then he'd be a no-brainer. As it stands right now, he's solid. I can't go more than that. The problem is that on this slate, solid is the number one pitcher on the slate. So I think that that's kind of what we're dealing with here. And I think that Morton does deserve to be number one for us for tonight against the Marlins at $10,000. Now, when we were talking about yesterday's slate, I had Taijuan Walker and things to watch as opposed to the pitching section. The reason that he was there was partially because there were what I thought were good alternatives in Scherzer, Darvish, and Malley. And obviously that didn't quite work out all that well, but that's why he was down there. The other reason was because I was concerned about a lack of upside against the Pirates, who are a low strikeout team. On this specific slate, things are pretty radically different, and I think that that's enough where Walker does deserve to be number 2 for us tonight at $9,500. As mentioned, he's facing the Pirates. They have an 85 WRC plus versus righties this year. Very minimal power, a 129 ISO versus righties. So you could probably check the box of Walker being safe. I don't, because our sample on Walker being really, really good is not super expansive. So I try to be cautious there, but he is pretty close given the matchup with the Pirates. He's also been very good. We talked about this yesterday on the show, but the most relevant sample for Walker is over his past 4 starts. He's been using fewer splitters, and that can be a red flag. Sometimes I will be wary of pitchers if they're throwing their off-speed stuff less, because it could mean they're not at full health. Especially now with the sticky stuff discussion, it could mean they can't get a grip on it. With Walker lowering the usage on his splitter, though, it's not actually a terrible thing, because the splitter has not been a great pitch for him so far this year. So over his past 4 starts, a 3.17 skill interactive ERA, 28% strikeout rate, and a 3% walk rate. Those are all really good numbers. And they're putting him up against the Pirates for today. The Pirates, not a powerful offense. They have the lowest WRC plus on the slate outside of the Rockies, who don't really have a scheduled pitcher against them as of yet. So it's a good matchup. He's at home. We do have to navigate the weather because, as mentioned, there is some rain concern for that game for today. But if we get the all clear with the weather, I do think that there is enough working in Walker's favor to make him the number 2 pitcher in tonight's slate behind Morton. I will say, too, that if you have too many concerns around the matchup between the repeat match between Morton and the Marlins, it's justifiable to go Walker over Morton. They're in the same tier to me. So to me, it is Morton 1, Walker 2, but they're kind of a 1A, 1B type of situation. And it's not like you must go Charlie Morton no matter what. As far as a value play, there's no safety with Kenta Maeda because we have not seen the full Kenta Maeda until last week. Last week, it was old school Kenta. He had 10 strikeouts over 6 shutout innings. I'm not sure if that will stick, but it does mean that he has upside. And if we're looking for upside in this slate, we're not going to find a whole lot of it. So I think we should at least give Maeda a look here, given the good start he had last week. We got 4 starts on Maeda since he came back from the injured list, and he's been leaning more on his four-seam fastball in that time. The velocity on his slider is down, but the movement on it is up quite a bit. And when I see that, it says to me that he's probably made a change in the way he's throwing that slider from what he was doing before. That's interesting. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to have reduced velocity. It might actually be kind of interesting because in those 4 starts, Maeda has a 28% strikeout rate. He's letting up hard contact just 23% of the time. So that's all great. It's not all sunshine and daisies, which is why I said I wasn't sure if it would stick, because Maeda is walking too many guys. He did let up 7 runs 2 starts ago. Plus, the Tigers aren't a prime target for pitchers that they were before. They've been playing a lot better offensively recently. So there is risk here. But again, he has a path to a ceiling game, and that's not super abundant on this slate. Guys who actually have a path to a good game for tonight. So Kenta Maeda, $7,300 on FanDuel for today. Really low salary. I think that helps a lot. So I do think that Maeda, despite the concerns, is worthwhile for today. So to me, it's Morton 1, Walker 2, Maeda the top value play. There's no safety among those guys outside of maybe Walker, but I do think that they all have upside, and I think that's enticing for me on this specific slate. So with pitchers being kind of shaky, that should mean that the stacks are a bit easier to get to, and they are, which helps. The Phillies are gaining a DH today. They're going to the Fenway, so an American League Park, which means they get a DH. I talked about Brad Miller as a guy who never plays, and I never get to talk about him, and he had, I think, 3 home runs last night, so hopefully he's in there today. It does stink. I kind of wish he hadn't done that, because outside the lines where I had him in, because I'd like to get him at a lower roster rate. But hey, either way, I think we should like the Phillies here against Garrett Richards. Richards is someone we've talked plenty about with regards to the spin rate discussion. He was very vocal in being against the enforcement, and we can see why. We're up to 7 starts with Richards having less movement on his four-seam fastball, and his skill interactive ERA is up to 5.46 with a 14% strikeout rate. He is allowing a 55% hard hit rate. He's leveled off a bit recently where the bleeding has started to slow a bit, but that's all relative to where it was before. He's still let up multiple home runs or earned runs in each game. He has not had more than 3 strikeouts since June 6th, and he let up 3 home runs 2 starts ago. So although it's been a little bit better, it still obviously ain't great. And we have reason to think that those struggles will continue. So the Phillies, they have plenty of guys we want to use now that Didi's back, now that maybe we'll get Brad Miller in there. Odubel Herrera is occasionally hitting decently. So I think that the Phillies are a team we should be good going to for today. Part of the reason I like the Phillies is Didi Gregorius being back. As we talked about, I like looking at plate discipline numbers when a player comes off the injured list, and Didi is looking pretty good there, drawing a good number of walks, making some hard contact. I think it's easy to feel good about him at $2,500 filling shortstop for today. So I think Didi Gregorius is someone who we should have in our Philly stacks for sure. We might not need all the salary savings, but hey, if it makes it easier to get to Bryce Harper, et cetera, Didi is someone I'm very willing to turn to for today. The Twins are facing Matt Manning tonight, and I'm not sure how long he'll be out there because he went to 60 pitches last time out, and they are limiting Casey Mize right now to try to make sure he can pitch the entire year. It could be a short stint for Manning, but I think the Twins have good upside for when Manning is out there. Manning's first few starts in the big leagues have been pretty rough. He is up to 4 starts there. He has a 5.85 skill interactive ERA with just a 7% strikeout rate, and his walk rate is 6%. That means he's letting up a ball in play 84% of the time, which is exactly what we want for stacking. And you would need an outlandish batted ball profile to get away with such a low strikeout rate. Manning is more middling. He is allowed a 42% hard hit rate with a 32% fly ball rate, and as we discussed when he first came up, those struggles were there in the minors too. So I'm not really expecting him to turn things around given the combination of the peripherals with what he did in the minors. That's especially true against a decent Twins offense. They have a 186 ISO versus righties. They got plenty of dingers in those bats. So I think we should stack the Twins tonight, even with not a ton of clarity on how long Manning will go for today. Stacking the Twins against a righty does mean we get to use both of their fun rookie lefties and Trevor Larnach and Alex Kirilloff. Larnach has a 198 ISO against righties. Kirilloff is 158, but he does make a lot of hard contact. And I think if I had to take an over-under on the 158 ISO, I take the over going forward for Kirilloff. Larnach is $2,600. Kirilloff is $2,700. So that makes a lot of sense. Help you get up to Nelson Cruz. So I am very into both those guys for tonight as part of a twin stack, but also as one-off. So you need to fill an outfield or utility slot. Finally, for the third stack, the White Sox are facing Jorge Lopez, and Lopez was doing some nice things earlier in the year, and those things have come back to earth. And I think that it makes a ton of sense to stack the White Sox tonight against him. Lopez does seem to have been impacted by the sticky stuff discussion. He's had less movement on his four-seamer over his past 6 starts. In that time, he has a 5.04 skill interactive ERA with an 18% strikeout rate, and he's walking a lot of guys. He's also letting up hard contact 49% of the time, and the results have been rough too, because his ERA in the time is 7.28. Lopez has faced some good teams in that time. We can sometimes see opponent strength dictate stuff like that, but the White Sox are feisty too. They got a 108 WRC plus versus righties. They draw a lot of walks. So I think they will get a lot of runners on base here, and that could lead to a lot of upside. The White Sox against righties do not have as much power as they do versus lefties, but I think the base runner angle, the volume angle, I think that that's enough to make the White Sox a good stack for today and a team that I want to go to. One of the exceptions to the White Sox have less power versus righties discussion is Brian Goodwin. It's still a small sample, but he's been lighting it up. He's got a 360 ISO in 60 plate appearances against righties. He's shown some flashes of power in the past. Still no, guy's not back yet from injury. Eloy Jimenez just starting his rehab stint for right now. So I don't know if Goodwin will keep up this specific pace, but I wouldn't be shocked if he continues to be a viable bat for DFS going forward. So Brian Goodwin, $3,000, someone I think we should feel great about in terms of stacking the White Sox, just because the power he's shown seems decent. So I think that we will be hard on him for today against Lopez. Let's finish up here with things to watch, starting off with a guy I was surprised to see near the top of the salary pool, and Zach Thompson. He is squaring off with the Braves for today at home, and I think you can consider Thompson because his numbers in his first 5 starts are really good. He has a 32% strikeout rate and a 3.25 skill interactive ERA. The reason I won't be going there is length. In his 5 starts, he's gone 55, 66, 73, 91, 87 pitches. And the Marlins are pretty conscious of how much they use their pitchers, especially the younger guys. And we saw them. I think that we could see a situation where Thompson doesn't get to go super deep in games yet. He was like a 2-inning guy for the most part in the minor leagues before he got called up. So I think you can justify it because 90 pitches of a 32% strikeout rate is pretty good, but I have concerns around the length and it's a tough matchup. So Thompson is someone I'm okay just watching for tonight and not being in on from a DFS perspective. 2 other stacks I like here are the Red Sox and the Dodgers. The Red Sox are facing Vince Velasquez, and Velasquez is coming back a little bit here. Over his past 6 starts with more four-seam fastballs, he's allowing a 47% fly ball rate. Not a ton of hard contact, which is weird for Velasquez, but strikeout rate down to 21%. Red Sox, a very good offense versus righties with a 102 WRC+, a lot of power. So both sides of the Red Sox-Phillies game very much in play from a stacking perspective. The Dodgers are facing Taylor Widener, and he had just 1 rehab start before he came back up, and he didn't look all that great in it. Now he's coming back up to face the Dodgers. Widener wasn't terrible, I guess, the way I'd phrase it, in his first stint as a starter in the big leagues, but definitely was not enough to scare me out of stacking the Dodgers here. So stacking for today, pretty easy. Got the Phillies, Twins, White Sox, Red Sox, and Dodgers. I am fully on board with all those. Hopefully that helps compensate for the lack of safety at pitcher for today to make it a better slate than it would be without those good stacking options. Okay, let's finish Friday on a high note. We got Eric Haas for the dinger call last night. He did go deep, so let's try to keep the streak going here. The boring home run call for today is Nelson Cruz. Facing Matt Manning, a lot of balls in play. Nelson Cruz has some power. We'll go out on a limb and say that. I think we can say that by now. So we'll go Nelson Cruz for the boring one. For the fun one, we'll go back to Boston and talk about Didi Gregorius, lower salary guy. Hits a bit lower in the order, which should keep the popularity off of him. And he's looked decent enough in his first couple of games back. So the home run calls for today, Nelson Cruz and Didi Gregorius going out on a high note for today and going out on a high note for the entire first half because the All-Star break coming up next week. We will not have a show, obviously, until next Friday. For that one, Tom Vecchio will be on with you because I will be heading to a wedding. So Tom will be with you on Friday next week. I'll be back with you the following Monday to get you set for the second half of MLB DFS. Make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. And as always, if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. If you have questions for me before the 4 p.m. stream for tonight, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Good luck with your MLB DFS lineups for tonight. Enjoy the All-Star break. Enjoy the weekend. We'll talk to you once again in a couple weeks. This has been the solo shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.